Hey guys, and welcome to my new Q&A-ish series. I feel weird calling it that, but it kind of is. So this is a series where I'm going to be answering questions based on design, and then covering hopefully a little bit more encompassing the subject. So one of the most common questions I'm asked, particularly when I'm live streaming, is what document size do I use, what grids do I use, how do I use grids, what's the width of the page, all like revolved around web design. And these may seem like simple questions to a lot of people. It is a bit of a daunting thing to get into when it comes to web design, especially when you don't understand how the other processes work, like the coding and the developing of the website. So I'm going to be covering that in this video. If you have any other questions regarding this or any other thing I do drop it in the comments below and I can work on it in another video. So let's begin with taking a look at my grid system and the one that I use. Now this is custom built. This is my own grid system, and it isn't based on any other formula than just my personal preference. It is important to know at the end of the day that a grid is just a guide. These are guides themselves in Photoshop, and they're more there to help you structure the page than it is to follow a strict set of rules. My personal guide is made up of columns that span 80 pixels wide, as you can see. They have 10 pixels either side of margin. We'll get into that in a minute. So this means that they kind of add up to 100 pixels, and when there's 12 of them, they add up to 1200. Now this makes a very nice and clean width, so that everything is in multiples of 10, easily divisible, and for example, when you select half, you know you're going to get 50 pixels, a round number. When you select a full, you're going to get 100 pixels, and of course the inside is 80 pixels, and you can just make any kind of combination there, and even this here, 20 pixels of course. So it's just really good with getting very nice clean round numbers, and often when I take this website into being coded, it's going to be responsive, which means that the width of the page is going to look a little bit different on every screen and monitor. So I'm just careful of that, and this is how I prefer to work. There are other grid systems, and you can look them up if you like. One popular one is the 960 grid system. You may have heard of that, but they typically all revolve around 12 columns. Now this is because it's one of the most diverse layouts. You can easily split it between 3 or 4 columns. They're the most common. So for example, going 4 columns wide, that's a third of the page. Going 3 columns wide, that is a quarter of the page. But it is important at the end of the day just to remember that this is a guide, but it is just there to support you and help you can maintain a consistent, a smart design that's going to be easier for the web developer to code it up when you're done. Now, one thing I just wanted to cover before we go into the intricacies of a grid is the size of the document. Now, this really doesn't matter at the end of it. When after sorting out your grid size, the width of the page, this stuff here, the white space, that really doesn't matter. What this is going to be is showing what your design does as it goes off the page. For example, is your website completely blocked in? Or is it going to overlap the page and have some sort of background or full width element? Now I'll cover that a little bit more in detail with one of my designs in a minute. I usually use a width of 1920 pixels, as that's the width of most common screen sizes. But really this could be anything from the width of your grid, which is 1200 pixels, to any number really. It could be 3000. It doesn't matter. At the end of the day, this is going to be a visual guide for the web developer when they're going to be making this design. So we're going to be using this design to explain to you how I use my grid. And I first wanted to show you it without the guides, so you can see how aligned and how consistent everything is. For example, we're going to look at these boxes in the bottom row here, and I'm just going to line the marquee tool up with this one here, and we're going to go up the page, and you'll see here that this box here, it's all aligned. It's all making a consistent feel, and we can do that with almost anything. We can just pick the edge of almost anything. So let's pick this one here, and there you go. So it comes through here. Now I'm just going to show you this with the guides, and as you can see, everything's keeping in with the grid. Now these don't have to be in quarters of the page. For example, this is half the page, and these two are quarter of the page, and so it adds up nicely as a half and half. You can really use any combination as long as you're making use of the grid. So if we go up to the top here, you can see that everything's looking very even and symmetrical. So one thing I do, which you don't really have to do, is if you hold down Shift, it maintains a square, so you can maintain proportions. And if you do that at the edge of a guide and bring it down, you can see that it will give you the height of whatever the width is. So as you see, this is an 80 by 80 pixels box. And so I decided to go with that for the height of my my nav bar. Now if we go down here for the Twitter bar, that's going to be half of that, 40 by 40 pixels. So you can see I don't even have to use it for the width. I can often use it just as a rough measurement. Now these are just rough measurements. These could be any height I wanted to. I just prefer keeping it quite smart. One place I do find it handy is with spacing. So if you come down here and do the same thing, 50 pixels height. That's smart because it's half the width of a single column. If we come down here, the spacing between the columns is going to be 20 pixels. So I decided it's only fit that the spacing between the height of them is 20 pixels. So you can just use this shift click to map that out. And if you can just bring a guide down, it will snap right on. So earlier we spoke about padding and margin. So I just wanted to cover that a little bit now. So these very small columns are the margins or padding, however you prefer to refer to them. And they're going to be helping you maintain consistent spacing, not only within the design itself, but within internal elements, like between text from its parent container. Now this can be seen on, for example, this box here with a benefits title. Now if we look at the spacing that it's got here, we can see that it's got 40 pixels wide spacing, and that's going to be pretty standard without, actually 50 pixels including the margin. So if we go over here, for example, this also has 50 pixels margin. If we go up here to a title, 50 pixels margin again, and even on the footer, 50 pixels margin. Now, no number is right. It just helps you maintain a consistent feel, and I've said that quite a lot throughout this video, maintaining a consistent and a good flow throughout your design, and that really is the key when it comes to guides and using grids. Just helping you keep a style and helping you maintain something that is solid and pleasing to the eye. So we could talk all day about what grids are, what they do, but you're only really going to know the benefits of them and how to get good with using them through practice. But how do you start making a grid? Now there are several tools for this, so we're just going to create a new document, and there is a tool in Creative Cloud, and I believe it might be in CS6. So if you go under View, New Guide Layout, and here you can see in the background we've also already got a very similar grid to what we were starting with. So number of columns, we're going to go 12, that's the standard, and 80 pixels wide, as we had before, with a 10 pixel gutter. Now you may see that there's a lot less lines here, and that's because I also had a center point for each of them. You can decide to go with rows, though this isn't something that I'm interested in, so we're just going to hide this for now. Margin also isn't needed, but we can add that if we like. Let's bring that down to 10 pixels, so it matches the margin in between each of our columns. And we could decide whether we want to center this in the page or not, and I think we do. It would be a little odd to have it aligned left. Hit OK, and we're done. There is one plugin that I do prefer using. It does a very similar thing to this, and a few features that it also has, which Photoshop doesn't provide. So if we open up here, we go to Guide. Now I got this when it was free, but I believe it's now $5 to purchase. So do bear that in mind, and I'll leave links to the plugins that I'm about to show you in the description. Now one thing I like about this is it does what we've just done, where you can add a column count, so 12, column width, so 80 pixels, column gutter, now this is the margin, so 10 pixels, and this is the same but for rows, so we're just going to leave that like we did. Now it's asking us the space that we want at the edge. This is like what we did before, so if we do 10 pixels, I'm just going to copy this over. And there we go. So now this is the exact same as what we've just done, only it's just being presented in a different way. So there are a few other features. I'm going to just delete this guide, and I'm going to show what this creates. So if we go Make Grid, and boom, a very similar thing to what we just had, though it isn't aligned to middle, and we can fix that. But one other thing you can do is if we delete these, you can go to Column Midpoint, and that's going to create a guide in the middle of each column. Gutter Midpoint, and that's going to do the same with the gutter. And we don't need to worry about rows because we haven't got any rows. Click make. Here you go. As you can see, it's made a guide in the middle of a column and also in the middle of the gutter. So if you wanted to make this center of the page, what I would do is I would crop it down to selection. You'd let it snap to the edge and make the selection of what you have. Go to image, crop, and there we go. So it's just the size of your grid layout. Go to image, canvas size, and you want to change the width to whatever you want the document to be. So I'm just going to go 1920 pixels. And there we go. This is my grid layout. So there is one other feature which I find very helpful when using Guide, and which is going to go back to my design to show you how I use it. So I'm going to show guides here. What I'm going to do is, I told you earlier how I was using spacing to align elements. So say we wanted to find out like the halfway between this title here and the top of the container. So if we made that selection, the height, then we could go middle point guide here, and there we go. It's made a middle point along the horizontal axis. But we can do the same vertically. So if we wanted to know the halfway distance between the edge of our guides and the edge of the page, we can do that. And there we go. We can do right, left, top, middle, bottom, whatever we like, and it becomes quite useful. It's very fast if you have this open to build up your guides and just get quick measurements. So we're back to the guide that we just made. Now one thing I used to do is I used to find a nice grid layout, I used to make my design, and then I realized, wait a second, I want to make a new design, do I have to start all over again? So I'd end up saving a document just like this as a PSD, and every time I wanted to start a new project, I would go to it, copy it into my working folder, and then I would start a project on that. Though that isn't really necessary now with this new plugin that I found called Template. So here I have, it looks like a blank document in the preview, but this is my current guide system. So this is what I use when I'm creating a new website. So let's just click create, and boom, this is what I use when I'm starting a new website. So how do you go about creating this? Now I will note that Template is free, unlike Guide, so you can download this right away, and there'll be a link in the description. If we just hit back here, and you can see I've only got one preset at the moment. So what we're going to do is we're going to make a slightly different one. We're going to decide for some odd reason that we don't want a few of our center guides. So let's take them out. And we've also decided that we want to keep a similar header whenever we create a design. So what we're going to do is we're going to create a 100 pixel high header, bring our guide down, and then we're just going to bring our marquee tool across. And on a new layer, we're going to create a red header just as a guide because we want to maintain the same kind of header on every page. And then we also would like a beautiful pink magenta square right in the middle. And this is just for demonstration purposes. So if we go now and create a new grid system, we go from current PSD, and it's going to ask you to name it. So I'm just going to call it template. You might want to give it a more specific name if you're having a few of them. There we go, it flashed for a second, and now we can go on to template. It will show us a preview of what we're about to make. And if I close this without saving it, nope, and then we click create, and in a new document it will create exactly what we had before, including the individual layers, so it isn't just a flat image. And that's a really fast way of saving your templates, opening them up, and starting them over. So yeah, I hope this does a good job of answering your questions and explaining to you how the grid works, what my document size is. This is quite a common question. I know it's quite simple for any of you advanced guys out there, so I'm open to any questions for my next video. Do leave a comment below or tweet me. All information will be in the description. So thanks for watching guys, and I will see you in my next video.